If you love stories about brilliant artists facing their own reflection on the worst possible night, then stick around, because this video was made for you. Before diving into the world of Blue Moon, take a second to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Because today's movie is not just about a famous songwriter, it is about that moment when someone realizes the world is moving on without them. And maybe you have felt a little bit of that too. Supporting the channel helps bring more deep dives like this one, where every scene is broken down not just for what happens, but for what it really means underneath the dialogue and the music. So let's talk about A Single Night in New York. 1943. Imagine the city buzzing with excitement because a groundbreaking musical called Oklahoma is opening on Broadway, promising a new era for American theater. While crowds pack the theater, the camera chooses a very different place to start: the quiet entrance of Sardi's, the legendary Broadway restaurant where the after-party will later explode with applause, industry talk, and celebration. And walking into that half-empty bar, slightly early, already out of step with everyone else, is Lauren's Larry Hart, played by Ethan Hawke, a man whose words once defined romance for an entire generation, now fighting the creeping feeling that his time has passed. The film traps the story inside this bar for most of its runtime, and that choice is not accidental. By confining nearly everything to Sardi's, Blue Moon turns one location into a pressure cooker, a stage where Larry performs for strangers while trying to convince himself he still matters. The bar is warm, full of soft light and polished wood, but it feels like a waiting room for judgment, especially because everyone there knows that a celebration will soon arrive, a celebration that is technically Larry's world, but no longer his party. From the moment he sits down, the movie invites the audience to watch not just what he says, but how he avoids saying what is really hurting him, and that tension becomes the true engine of the story. Larry's first real anchor in this space is Eddie, the bartender, played by Bobby Cannavale, who treats him with a mix of affection, patience, and firm boundaries. The detail that Eddie tries to limit what Larry drinks is crucial, because it turns their interaction into more than casual banter. It becomes a battle over self-control, appearance, and denial, with each glass symbolizing how close Larry is willing to get to his own limits. Their conversations are funny on the surface, full of quips and charm, but underneath, every joke hides a confession that Larry is not ready to make directly. So he wraps his fears inside his wit, hoping no one notices how fragile he really is. The film uses time almost like a secondary character. The night moves forward slowly, with Larry arriving before anyone else, filling the awkward silence with stories about his past successes, his legendary songs, and the old partnership with Richard Rodgers that once made his name unshakable. As he talks, it becomes clear he is rehearsing a version of himself that he wants others to see: the brilliant lyricist, the clever observer, the guy who can still own a room with a story. Yet every time he glances toward the door or the clock, the illusion cracks a little, because he knows that at this very moment, Rodgers is at the theater, proving he no longer needs Larry's words to conquer Broadway. A younger pianist, on leave from military duty, becomes another mirror for Larry, someone who represents a future that still has time, talent, and hope ahead of it. Larry talks to him as if mentoring, explaining the industry, the craft, the highs of success, but the real subtext is that Larry is talking to a younger version of himself, trying to remember what it felt like when everything seemed possible. The pianist listens with a mix of admiration and distance, and that subtle emotional gap underlines one of the movie's core ideas. No matter how legendary you are, the next generation might respect you without fully understanding the cost of your journey. Blue Moon structures its narrative almost like a confession stretched across an evening. Details about Larry's life surface in fragments: his collaborations, his reputation for brilliance, his struggles to maintain stability in his personal and professional world. Instead of showing big public moments or awards, the film chooses intimate recollections, half-told stories, and half-finished sentences, trusting the audience to piece together a portrait of someone who wrote unforgettable words but never found the same harmony in real life. This fragmented approach gives the film a raw emotional quality because Larry's memories don't arrive neatly. They spill out when something triggers them, whether it is a song on the piano, a comment from Eddie, or the simple sound of laughter from a nearby table. Midway through the film, an important presence steps into the bar. Elizabeth Weiland, played by Margaret Qualley, a young Yale art student connected to the theater world through her powerful family. For Larry, she is more than just a romantic interest. She is a symbol of a life he wishes he could still step into. Youthful, bright, full of possibilities and social grace. When she appears, the energy in the room shifts, because Larry suddenly has someone he wants to impress, someone who makes him feel both alive and painfully aware of his own vulnerabilities. The scenes with Elizabeth are some of the film's most delicate. Larry becomes almost boyish, trying to charm her with stories and references, reaching for that quick wit that once came effortlessly in every room he entered. Yet Linklater and the script refuse to let this become a simple, late romance fantasy. Instead, Elizabeth embodies the bittersweet tension between admiration and distance, seeing Larry as both fascinating and slightly unstable, both a legend and a warning. Each moment between them feels like a negotiation between fantasy and reality, with Larry pushing for connection, while the film quietly shows how much of that connection exists only in his mind. Richard Rogers, played by Andrew Scott, enters the story late, but casts a shadow from the beginning, because Larry never stops circling around his name. For most of the movie, Rogers is an invisible presence, mentioned in memories, hinted at in bitterness, framed as the partner who moved on and found new stability with a new collaborator, Oscar Hammerstein II. When he finally arrives at Sardi's, the film does something very smart. It does not explode into a loud confrontation. Instead, it leans into awkwardness, quiet pauses and loaded glances, which makes their encounter feel much more real and painful. The reunion between Larry and Rogers plays like a duet that has lost its rhythm. Both men know each other deeply, understand each other's talents, and share years of professional success. But now every word is measured, as if they are afraid any sentence might become the last one they share. Rogers, more composed and settled, tries to be kind without opening the door too wide, while Larry uses humor and charm as shields, hoping to slip in one last chance at partnership without directly begging for it. Their conversation reveals that the artistic break between them was not just about style. It was about lifestyle, reliability, and the painful reality that genius alone is sometimes not enough to keep a collaboration alive. One of the powerful aspects of Blue Moon is how it uses the song Blue Moon not just as a famous tune, but as a thematic backbone. The idea of a blue moon suggests something rare, beautiful, and fleeting, exactly how the film portrays Larry's gifts and his moment in the spotlight. Throughout the night, the lyrics and melody linger like a ghost, reminding the audience that the man sitting at the bar once captured the feeling of loneliness and longing in a way almost no one else could, even if he never fully escaped those feelings in his everyday life. The script constantly blurs the line between performance and authenticity. Larry is always on, always telling a story, always reaching for the clever line, but the camera keeps catching the moments in between when his smile slips or his shoulders drop. Linklater and Hawke work together to show how exhausting it is to be the entertaining genius all the time, to live as the life of the party when deep down there is a fear that the party is already over for you. The result is that every joke carries a weight. Every anecdote becomes evidence in an unspoken trial where Larry judges himself and suspects the verdict has already been decided. Eddie and the other secondary characters function almost like a silent jury, watching Larry's behavior and reacting with a mix of concern, admiration, and fatigue. They have seen this pattern before. The early arrival, the big stories, the attempts at self-control, and the slow slide toward emotional chaos as the night wears on. But the film never turns them into caricatures of judgment. Instead, they are people who care in small, practical ways, refilling a glass a bit more slowly, changing the subject when a conversation cuts too close, or gently trying to steer Larry towards safer emotional ground. As the party for Oklahoma finally gathers momentum upstairs, Larry becomes increasingly aware of the distance between the success happening above him and the turmoil he is trapped in below. Sounds of celebration leak through, reminding him that history is being made without him, that songs and shows will go on with or without his contribution. At times it feels like he is standing under his own legacy, listening to the echo of something he helped build but no longer owns, and that realization fuels some of his most desperate attempts to be seen and heard before the night ends. The emotional climax of the film does not rely on big external events. but on an internal collapse. There is a point where Larry's carefully maintained persona finally cracks, revealing the hurt he has been trying to charm his way around all night. In that moment, the film asks the audience to reconsider everything they have just watched. The jokes, the flirtations, the stories about past triumphs, and to see them as defense mechanisms built by a man who knows exactly how talented he is, but fears that talent is no longer enough to justify his chaos. By focusing on this single night, Blue Moon becomes less a standard biopic and more a character study about legacy and self-worth. Instead of racing through decades, the movie slows everything down to make you feel what it is like to sit with the knowledge that your best work might already be behind you, while the world keeps cheering for the next big thing. It invites you to sit at the bar with Larry, to listen to his stories and feel the tension between the charming surface and the storm underneath. And in doing so, it turns his private crisis into a universal question about relevance and aging. Even the historical context deepens this sense of unease. The war, the changing tastes in entertainment, the rise of new collaborations like Rodgers and Hammerstein, all of it signals a shift in culture from one era to another. Larry is not just losing a partner, he is watching an entire style of writing and performing evolve without him, which makes his sense of displacement feel even more intense. The bar becomes the last safe space where he can pretend he still belongs to the old world, even as the new one knocks politely at the door upstairs. By the end of the film, the night at Sardi's has revealed everything it needed to. Larry's relationships, with Eddie, with Elizabeth, with Rodgers, and most importantly with himself, have been laid bare through looks, pauses, and half-spoken regrets. The movie does not need a neat resolution, because the point is not to show a clean transformation, but to share one honest evening in which a man finally faces the gap between who he was, who he is, and who he could have been. That choice makes the ending linger in your mind long after the credits, much like a song that refuses to leave your head, even when the music has stopped. So now it is your turn. Watching Larry across this one long night, did you feel more sympathy for him as a misunderstood artist, or frustration at the way he sabotages himself whenever connection is within reach? And if you were sitting at that bar beside him, listening to his stories while the celebration roared upstairs, would you tell him the truth about how the world is changing, or let him keep living for one more night under his own blue moon?